The piercing sound of emergency alarms filled every corner of Drakmar Station, making the metal walls vibrate with their urgent warning. Dr. Rebecca Hayes grabbed her 7-year-old daughter Katie's small hand and pulled her along the crowded hallways. People were running everywhere, their faces showing panic and confusion as red warning lights flashed overhead. "Mommy, what's happening? Why is everyone scared?" Katie asked, having to shout over the deafening noise of the sirens that seemed to come from every direction. Rebecca looked down at her daughter's worried face and tried to keep her own voice calm, even though her heart was beating fast with fear. "There's a problem with the station's power, honey. We need to get to the safe areas quickly." She squeezed Katie's hand tighter as they moved through the chaos. Drakmar Station wasn't like other space stations. For the past 3 years, it had been home to the most dangerous and mysterious research project in the galaxy. The scientists here were studying the Zephyrian dragons, creatures so massive and powerful that they could destroy entire planets if they wanted to. These dragons were made of living crystal that sparkled like diamonds, and they were smarter than any computer humans had ever built. But there was one thing about the dragons that nobody understood. In all the years of studying them, not a single person had ever seen their babies. The adult dragons protected their young with such fierce determination that they would attack anything that came even close to their nesting areas. Some scientists thought the dragon babies might not even exist. Others believed they were hidden somewhere so secret that no one would ever find them. Rebecca had come to this remote station after her husband died in a terrible accident back on Earth. She was a computer expert, and the station needed people who could work with the complex systems that monitored the dragons. It was dangerous work, but it paid well, and she needed the money to take care of Katie. The little girl had been sad for months after losing her father, and Rebecca hoped that living among the stars might help her heal. The station's main power core was having serious problems, and if it completely failed, everyone on board could die. The emergency systems were trying to keep them alive, but the backup power wouldn't last forever. All the families with children were supposed to go to the escape pods first, just in case they needed to leave the station quickly. As they rushed through the corridors, Rebecca was thinking about so many things at once. She was worried about the power failure, scared about what might happen to them, and trying to remember the quickest route to the evacuation area. With all these thoughts filling her mind, she didn't notice when Katie's attention was caught by something else entirely. Katie heard a sound that was different from the harsh alarm bells. It was soft and beautiful, like music floating through the air. The sound seemed to be coming from somewhere deep inside the station, from places where people weren't supposed to go. It reminded her of the gentle songs her daddy used to sing when she couldn't sleep at night, back when he was still alive and everything in her world felt safe. The little girl's curiosity was stronger than her fear. While her mother was focused on getting to safety, Katie quietly let go of her hand and slipped away into a side corridor. The hallway was darker than the main areas, and there were warning signs on the walls written in many different alien languages. But Katie couldn't read most of them, and even if she could, the beautiful humming sound was calling to her like a magic spell. She followed the mysterious music deeper and deeper into parts of the station that no human had ever explored. The corridors became wider and the walls looked different, as if they were made of smooth stone instead of metal. The humming grew louder and more beautiful with each step she took, filling her heart with a strange kind of peace that she hadn't felt since her father died. Finally, Katie found herself standing at the edge of an enormous cave that glowed with soft, colorful light. The walls sparkled like they were covered in precious gems, and the air felt warm and comfortable. She was so tired from all the excitement and fear of the day, and the gentle music was making her feel sleepy and calm. Without thinking about danger or rules or anything else, Katie walked into the glowing cave and found 2 large, smooth shapes that looked like giant eggs made of crystal. They were warm to the touch and seemed to pulse gently with their own inner light. The music was coming from them, she realized, as if they were singing her the most beautiful lullaby in the universe. Katie curled up between these mysterious crystal objects, using them like pillows. The warmth and the music wrapped around her like a soft blanket, and within minutes, she fell into the deepest, most peaceful sleep she had experienced since her father's death. She had no idea that she had just done something impossible, something that would change the relationship between humans and dragons forever. Elder Dragon Corvatus had lived for over 3,000 years, and in all that time, he had never seen anything that made him question everything he believed about the world. But as he returned to check on his youngest children in the sacred nesting caverns, he stopped so suddenly that his massive crystalline body created small earthquake tremors in the cave floor. There, sleeping peacefully between his 2 baby dragons, was a tiny human child. Her small chest rose and fell with steady breathing, and her face looked completely calm and happy, as if she was having the most wonderful dream. This should have been impossible. This should have sent his babies fleeing in terror. This should have triggered every protective instinct that dragons had developed over millions of years. But none of those things were happening. Corvatis was so large that when he stood fully upright, his head nearly touched the ceiling of the enormous cave. His body was made of living crystal that sparkled with inner light, shifting through colors like a rainbow made of diamonds. When he was angry or surprised, that light would flash like lightning. Right now, it was flickering with confusion and amazement. His two youngest cubs were behaving in a way he had never seen before. Instead of running away from the strange creature that had invaded their nest, they were lying closer to her. Their own crystalline scales were glowing with a gentle, steady light that seemed to pulse in perfect time with the little girl's heartbeat. It was as if their bodies were somehow connected to hers, sharing the same rhythm of life. Dragon babies were usually very nervous creatures. They would hide behind their parents when strangers approached, even when those strangers were their own grandparents or aunts and uncles. The babies had never, in the entire history of their species, allowed any non-dragon to come close to them. Dragons had always believed this was natural and right, that it kept their young safe from the dangerous universe outside their protected caves. But this human child had somehow walked right into their most sacred space, and instead of causing panic, she had brought peace. Corvatis reached out with his mind to contact the other elder dragons who lived in different parts of the cave system. Dragons could speak to each other without using words, sending thoughts and feelings directly from one mind to another. His mental voice was filled with shock and wonder as he called to them. Within minutes, 5 other ancient dragons had silently glided into the nursery cave. Each of them was thousands of years old, and each of them had raised many generations of dragon children. They had seen everything there was to see about dragon behavior. But what they witnessed now made them all freeze in amazement. Elder Virana, whose crystal scales were the deep blue color of ocean depths, moved her great head closer to examine the scene. Her ancient eyes, which glowed like stars, studied every detail. The human child was so small that she could have fit in just one of Virana's claws, yet she showed no fear at all. Elder Thraxis, whose red crystal body pulsed like a beating heart, watched as one of Corvatis's cubs gently adjusted its position to make sure the sleeping child stayed warm. The baby dragon's movements were careful and protective, like a mother caring for her own offspring. As they all observed this impossible scene, the child stirred slightly in her sleep. She made a small, happy sound and snuggled deeper between the 2 dragon babies. Instead of moving away, both young dragons immediately shifted to make her more comfortable. Their crystal scales grew warmer, creating a living blanket around her tiny form. The elder dragons looked at each other with minds full of questions they had never thought to ask before. For thousands of years, they had taught their children to fear and avoid all other species. They had built their entire society around the idea that isolation meant safety, that keeping away from others was the only way to survive. But watching this peaceful scene made them wonder if they had been wrong all along. Maybe their fear of other species wasn't wisdom. Maybe it was just fear, pure and simple. Maybe they had been so afraid of getting hurt that they had forgotten how to make friends. The sleeping human child looked so innocent and trusting. She had wandered into their most protected space and simply decided to take a nap, as if she belonged there. And somehow, in ways the dragons didn't understand, she did belong there. Their babies accepted her presence more easily than they accepted visits from their own relatives. Elder Corvatis felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. It was a feeling of possibility, of hope, of wondering if the future might be different from the past. This tiny human had already changed everything just by falling asleep in the right place. What other impossible things might become possible if they stopped being so afraid of the universe outside their caves? Katie opened her eyes slowly, feeling more rested than she had in months. The first thing she noticed wasn't where she was or what surrounded her, but the incredible music that filled the air around her. It sounded like thousands of tiny bells made of pure starlight, all singing together in perfect harmony. The melody was so beautiful that it made her heart feel warm and happy, like drinking hot chocolate on a cold winter day. As her vision cleared, she found herself looking up at the most amazing creatures she had ever seen. 2 baby dragons sat nearby, their bodies made of what looked like living crystal that sparkled and glowed with soft, changing colors. They were about the size of large dogs, but instead of fur, they had smooth scales that caught the light like precious gems. Their eyes were large and kind, glowing with a gentle inner light that reminded Katie of fireflies dancing in summer evenings. Any normal person would have screamed with terror at finding themselves surrounded by dragons, even baby ones. But Katie felt no fear at all. Something deep in her heart told her that these creatures were friends, not enemies. They had been keeping her warm while she slept, and their beautiful singing had given her the most peaceful dreams she could remember. The music the baby dragons were making reminded her of something precious. It was similar to a lullaby her daddy used to sing to her every night before bed, back when he was still alive. He had taught her the words about stars watching over sleeping children, promising that even when grown-ups couldn't be there, the stars would always keep little ones safe. Without thinking about it, Katie began to hum that familiar melody. Her small voice joined the crystalline music of the dragons, and something magical happened. The baby dragons immediately changed their tune to match hers, as if they had known the song their whole lives. Together, they created a new kind of music that had never existed before, a blend of human warmth and dragon crystal magic that filled the cave with wonder. The sound they made together was so beautiful that it seemed to make the very walls of the cave glow brighter. Katie had never felt so happy or so connected to anything in her life. It was as if she and the baby dragons were speaking the same language, even though they weren't using any words at all. Elder Corvatis watched this incredible scene with his ancient eyes wide with amazement. In 3,000 years of life, he had never seen his children respond to any creature the way they were responding to this small human. The baby dragons were usually shy and nervous around strangers, but with Katie, they were confident and playful. Katie slowly stood up, feeling brave and curious. She reached out her small hand toward one of the baby dragons, moving slowly so she wouldn't scare it. When her fingers gently touched the dragon's snout, something wonderful happened. The dragon's scales immediately began to shine brighter, like a crystal catching sunlight. The colors swirled and danced across its body in patterns that looked like happiness made visible. Katie laughed with pure joy at this magical response, and her laughter was the most beautiful sound the dragons had ever heard. It was completely innocent and trusting, full of wonder and delight. The sound echoed through the caves in a way that even the most beautiful dragon songs had never done before. It seemed to touch something deep in every dragon heart, reminding them of feelings they had forgotten long ago. The elder dragons communicated silently among themselves, their minds full of amazement and confusion. This human child showed no fear of them at all, even though their kind had been taught to fear dragons for thousands of years. More importantly, their own babies were responding to her with joy and trust, emotions they rarely showed even to their own family members. Katie decided to teach her new friends a game her father had shown her. She began clapping her hands in a simple rhythm, then laughing and encouraging the baby dragons to try it too. The dragons didn't have hands like humans, but they had small crystalline appendages that they could move. They watched Katie carefully, then tried to copy her movements, creating their own version of the clapping game. When the baby dragons succeeded in matching her rhythm, they made sounds that could only be described as laughter. It was a tinkling, musical sound like wind chimes dancing in a gentle breeze. For the first time in many generations, the sacred dragon caves echoed with the sound of young dragons playing and laughing, something the elders had almost forgotten was possible. As Elder Corvatis watched this incredible scene, he began to understand something that changed everything he thought he knew about the universe. Humans possessed something that dragons had lost somewhere in their long history. They had a natural ability to connect with others that went beyond words, beyond fear, beyond even the differences between species. Katie wasn't trying to communicate with the baby dragons, she was simply being herself, open and loving and trusting, and that was enough to bridge a gap that had existed for thousands of years. Dr. Rebecca Hayes had been searching for her daughter for what felt like hours, running through every corridor and checking every room on Drakmar Station. Her heart was pounding with fear and panic as she called Katie's name over and over again. The emergency alarms had finally stopped, but the silence that followed was somehow even more terrifying than the loud sirens had been. As Rebecca searched the deeper parts of the station, she began to hear something strange and beautiful. It was music unlike anything she had ever experienced before, a melody that seemed to float through the air like magic. The sound was coming from the restricted areas where no humans were supposed to go, the dangerous zones that were marked with warning signs in dozens of alien languages. Following the mysterious music, Rebecca found herself at the entrance to enormous caves that she never knew existed. The walls sparkled with natural crystal formations, and a warm, gentle light filled the space. But what she saw inside those caves made her stop breathing for a moment. There was Katie, her 7-year-old daughter, sitting on the floor and playing some kind of game with two creatures that looked like they were made of living diamonds. The creatures were clearly baby dragons, about the size of large dogs, with scales that shifted through every color of the rainbow. They were making musical sounds as they played, and Katie was laughing with pure joy. "Katie!" Rebecca called out, her voice echoing through the cave. She expected her daughter to come running to her, scared and sorry for wandering off. Instead, Katie just looked up, waved happily, and went back to her game with the dragon babies. Rebecca's first instinct was to rush forward and grab her daughter, to get her away from these dangerous creatures as quickly as possible. But something made her stop. The dragons didn't look threatening at all. In fact, they seemed to be protecting Katie, keeping her safe and warm. And Katie looked happier than she had been since her father died. Suddenly, a shadow fell across the cave entrance. Rebecca looked up to see the most massive creature she had ever imagined. Elder Corvatus was so huge that he blocked out most of the light from the cave opening. His crystalline body towered above her like a living mountain, sparkling with colors that hurt to look at directly. Rebecca felt like a tiny ant standing next to a skyscraper. But when the great dragon spoke, his voice wasn't angry or threatening. Instead, it carried a sadness so deep that it made Rebecca's heart ache. The station's computers translated his thoughts into words she could understand, and what he said changed everything she thought she knew about dragons. "Your child has shown us something we had forgotten," the ancient dragon said, his mental voice heavy with centuries of grief. "Our babies have been dying, but we didn't understand why. We thought we were protecting them by keeping them away from everyone else. We thought isolation would keep them safe." Rebecca stared up at the massive creature, trying to process what he was telling her. Dragons were supposed to be the most powerful and intelligent beings in the galaxy. How could they not understand what was wrong with their own children? Elder Corvatus continued, his voice growing even sadder. "We have been so afraid for so long that we forgot something important. Our young ones need more than just their parents. They need friends, they need play, they need to explore and discover and wonder about the world. Your daughter is teaching our babies how to be happy again." As Rebecca watched, she could see that the elder dragon was telling the truth. The baby dragons were more active and playful than any dragon behavior she had ever read about in scientific reports. They were laughing, a sound that no human had ever heard before. Katie had somehow unlocked something in them that had been sleeping for generations. "Your species has something we lost long ago," Elder Corvatus explained. "Humans know how to connect with others without fear. You understand friendship in ways we had forgotten. Our children are learning from your child how to trust, how to play, how to be young again." The full meaning of what was happening hit Rebecca like a physical blow. The dragons, for all their power and wisdom, had been making a terrible mistake for thousands of years. They had been so focused on protecting their children from danger that they had isolated them from everything that makes life worth living. The baby dragons were dying of loneliness, even though they were surrounded by loving parents. But Katie, with her natural human ability to make friends and trust others, had solved a problem that the smartest beings in the galaxy couldn't figure out. She had shown the dragon babies that it was safe to be happy, safe to play, safe to connect with someone different from themselves. As news of this incredible discovery spread throughout the station and beyond, emergency signals began lighting up communication boards across the galaxy. Within hours, massive warships belonging to the Galactic Council were heading toward Drakmar Station at maximum speed. The Council was made up of the oldest and most powerful alien civilizations in known space, and they were terrified of what was happening. For thousands of years, the balance of power in the galaxy had depended on keeping the dragons isolated. If humans could form an alliance with the most powerful species in the universe, it would change everything. The Council couldn't allow that to happen, no matter what the cost. Rebecca realized that Katie's innocent friendship with the baby dragons had accidentally started something that could lead to war across the entire galaxy. For 3 long days, the space around Drakmar Station looked like the beginning of the biggest war the galaxy had ever seen. Hundreds of massive warships from the Galactic Council hung in the darkness like metal vultures, their weapons pointed at the small research station. But between them and their target stood something no one had ever witnessed before in the history of known space. Dragon mothers had emerged from their hidden caves for the first time in over 500 years. These enormous crystalline beings, each one larger than a city building, formed a glittering wall around the station. Their bodies pulsed with rainbow colors that shifted like living auroras, and their presence made the space itself seem to hum with ancient power. For centuries, these female dragons had remained hidden, protecting their young in secret places where no outsider could find them. Now they floated in open space, willing to face an entire fleet to protect one small human child. At the center of this cosmic standoff, completely unaware of the political storm swirling around her, Katie continued to play with her dragon friends. She had taught them games like hide and seek, which was hilarious to watch since baby dragons made of glowing crystal weren't very good at hiding. She showed them how to make funny faces, which looked amazing when dragon scales could change colors to match their emotions. Most importantly, she had taught them how to laugh, filling the ancient caves with sounds of joy that hadn't been heard there for thousands of years. Admiral David Chen commanded the Council fleet from his flagship, a massive vessel bristling with enough weapons to destroy entire planets. He had been ordered to stop the human-dragon contact immediately, using any force necessary. The Council was terrified that if humans and dragons became allies, the balance of power that had kept peace in the galaxy for millennia would collapse overnight. Through the communication systems, Admiral Chen's voice boomed across space, demanding that all humans be removed from dragon territory immediately. His words were backed up by the threat of hundreds of warships, each one capable of turning Drakmar Station into cosmic dust. But Elder Corvatis had lived for 3,000 years, and he had learned not to make decisions based on fear alone. His massive form drifted between the warships and the station, so large that some of the smaller council vessels looked like toys beside him. When he spoke, his mental voice reached every ship in the fleet, calm and ancient and completely unafraid. "Before you judge what you do not understand," the Elder Dragon communicated, "look and see what has actually happened here. Judge us by the results, not by your fears." What the council representatives saw through their long-range scanners and observation equipment changed everything they thought they knew about dragons. For decades, their scientists had been secretly studying dragon behavior from a distance, and they had noticed that young dragons seemed sick and unhappy. The babies were listless and withdrawn, showing none of the curiosity and energy that young creatures should have. Many council experts had assumed this was just normal dragon behavior. But now, the dragon babies in the station were completely different. They were active, playful, and full of life. They explored their environment with eager curiosity, invented new games every day, and sang songs that mixed human melodies with their own crystalline music. The change was so dramatic that it was impossible to ignore. The Council's best scientists studied the data for hours, checking and rechecking their observations. The evidence was undeniable. These dragon cubs were healthier, smarter, and happier than any young dragons that had been observed in recorded history. Whatever the humans had done, it had solved a problem that no one even knew existed. Elder Corvatis made an offer that no one in the galaxy had ever expected to hear. The dragons would share their most advanced technology with humanity. They would teach humans about faster-than-light travel, energy manipulation, and scientific knowledge that was millions of years ahead of anything other species possessed. But there was one condition. Humans would help raise dragon children, teaching them the social skills and emotional connections that dragons had forgotten how to provide. The dragon parents were brilliant at protecting and educating their young, but they had lost the ability to help them be truly happy. Humans, with their natural talent for making friends and building emotional bonds, could give dragon children something their own parents couldn't. The Galactic Council faced an impossible choice. They could start a war against the most powerful beings in the universe, or they could accept that the balance of power was about to change forever. After 3 days of tense negotiations, they chose peace. Katie became the first official human-dragon cultural ambassador, though she didn't really understand what that meant. She just knew that she had the best job in the universe, playing with baby dragons every day and teaching them how to have fun. As word spread throughout human space, volunteers lined up to join the new cultural exchange program. The dragons kept their promise, sharing technology that advanced human civilization by thousands of years almost overnight. But more importantly, they shared something else. The dragon parents learned by watching humans that true strength didn't come from hiding behind walls of fear. Real courage meant being willing to trust others, even when that trust felt dangerous. Within a generation, the galaxy was transformed. Human children grew up playing with dragon cubs, learning wisdom from creatures that had existed since before their son was born. Dragon children learned laughter, creativity, and the joy of friendship from their human companions. The two species became so closely bonded that it became impossible to imagine one without the other. And it all started because one little girl fell asleep in the right place at the right time, showing an ancient species that sometimes the most important discoveries come not from science or warfare, but from the simple courage to make a friend.